Welcome back to another edition of the Indycar Preview Show. I'm Casey Campbell, and that is, of course, the channel's IndyCar expert. That, of course, is Colin Culp of Twin Checkers, who will be at Indy tomorrow. Are you excited to go back?
I'm excited. I was there a couple weeks ago for the open test, and that was on the oval. And just even sitting in the mound, not even getting a great view, it's a special place. So anytime you can go there, it really means something.
And it is officially the month of May, Colin's favorite month of the year, because his favorite sport, IndyCar, is going to be. I mean, obviously, it is a big deal, and we'll obviously talk about this we'll talk about this next week when we preview qualifying. But obviously, we'll talk all about the Indy 500 and for the next few weeks. We'll talk about qualifying, we'll talk about the preview and all that fun stuff. But this week, it's the first of two Indy road course races of the year. It's been an interesting day at the track so far. They're actually getting ready to qualify in about an hour at time of recording. So this should be up pretty quickly after we get done recording here. But a pretty interesting day at the track so far. What's it going to be like going to Indy? What are these drivers going to face coming here tomorrow?
Yeah, the Grand Prix is an interesting case because in the grand scheme of such a historic event and a historic month like open wheel cars in Indianapolis, the Grand Prix, this is only going to be the 10th year it's happened in the spring like it has. 2020 was kind of funky happening in July, but this will be the 10th event where we're racing the Grand Prix before we race the 500. But it's become embraced. It's something to look forward to, and it's a nice way to start off the month here at Indianapolis. And the drivers, there's one that stands out in the relatively short history. It's Will Power. This is Will Power's house, which is not something you can usually say about Indianapolis for anyone. Maybe Michael Schumacher for when Formula One went there.
Right.
But Will Power has won a lot here. 6 poles, 5 wins. He was on pole last May for that Wet and Wild affair, which I'm sure we'll get into in a second. But this is a track that people really want to win at. It's Indianapolis, and anytime you can win at Indianapolis, it's a big deal.
Let's of course, this was a rain race last year, and there possibly could be some weather in the forecast this weekend. So what are we going to expect with this, and who do you think might come out on top? Could this be a Penske race, a Ganassi race, an Andretti race, a McLaren race, or could we see, someone from the best of the rest come up?
It's a good question. This is a strange track to kind of pin that, because like with Will Power's dominance, it's kind of been a Penske track, kind of your default is Indianapolis and Penske, even with the road course. But it could be a Rahal weekend or a McLaren weekend. Pato led the opening session, and both Jack Harvey and Christian Lundgaard had a lot of speed this morning for Rahal, a team that needs a really good weekend. Christian Lundgaard and Jack Harvey, I think Lundgaard's first start was here a couple of years ago on the road course in an IndyCar. And Jack Harvey, this is his track, man. When Will Power was winning a bunch of races recently, Jack Harvey's been on the podium here a lot. And Simon Pagenaud as well for Meyer Shank Racing was on the podium last year. One thing that was interesting, Andretti swept the Indy Grand Prix events last year. So the one in May with Colton Herta in the wet, and Alex Rossi when he was there in late July, completely dry in midday. They weren't as great in the opening practice sessions as I kind of expected. Colton Herta had a kind of mechanical issue that they were able to do one lap in practice. But not the domination that we've come to expect, right? So let me pull up timing and scoring just to make sure. Yeah. I think I'm wearing this orange shirt to make up for my mistake, this Pato Award shirt, because I tried to preview this event. You can read it at Twin Checkers. I think I do a good job. And I mentioned if it's going to be a rainy affair, it's going to be whoever can get on dry tires at the right times if there's opportunity to. Yeah. that's going to be the person that can control the race and kind of lead it from there. There was some split strategy last year, and there was late cautions. Colton Herta's decision to go on dry tires when he did very earlier than everyone else in that race, that very first stint, if you go back that first 5 laps, he was able to control the rest of the race from there. And even with people doing that, by the end, they timed it out where he was in control. If it's wet, you want to be in that position. Not only is survival important, like it is at every race, especially when it's wet, you want to dictate, you want to be able to control your own destiny, to steal a term from basketball playoffs or something like that, right? So if you're leading, you're the only one that can really do that. If you're in second, you've got to try and split strategy or try and beat the leader on strategy. If it's a dry race, obviously now we're opening up to alts and primary tires and all that. That's probably going to resemble something more like July. But that was an event dominated by Andretti. Colton Herta led the first half of that race before gearbox failure in that. And then Alexander Rossi led the rest of the way. So I'm not really sure what to expect anymore tomorrow. Hopefully qualifying, if it's in the dry, I see it's raining now in Indianapolis, so qualifying might be in the wet, which will shake things up.
Definitely.
If it rains tomorrow, last I checked, it's going to be near the end of the race. So it's probably going to start in the dry, which should be interesting. And if it does rain, it'll be near the end. But it's late spring to summer in the Midwest. It could be raining in 5 minutes and you don't even know. So who's to say? But I think Rahal and McLaren have positioned themselves well to have a really good weekend. And that's not something I would have even predicted yesterday. So we'll have to see how qualifying unfolds. But if those drivers then are going to have to get a great lap in conditions that they are not used to running in, if that's the case, if it's wet in an hour or so.
Yeah. So coming in, so it's you mentioned it's of course raining, and qualifying will actually be in an hour at the time of recording. So it's been a pretty eventful day at the racetrack. Of course, you got, we just had the USF 2000 race. Congrats to Sam Corey winning that one. And actually, going to pivot from that, I know Matt Clark and Simon Sykes had a pretty good battle heading in there, and then we also saw why the Halos are now on the USF Pro cars now. There was a couple crashes where a couple cars went airborne and stuff. So the Halo did its job.
Yep. You'll love to see it. Can't complain. Who cares how it looks if it's saving people's lives?
Also, Matteo Nannini has the pole for the Indy Next race on today, and what a race what a week it's been for Juncos Racing. Of course, Reese Gold was let go by the team a few weeks ago. He is now with HMD. He is in the 10. Rasmus Lind, who was at HMD, is now back at Juncos in the 76. So basically, they just swapped rides. So we'll have to see how that goes. But hey, Juncos got the pole, and they have not had a good start to the Indy Next season, and that's a big step for Matteo Nannini, of course, coming from the Formula ranks. And I know his season has not gotten off to a good start, but should be an interesting Indy Next race this weekend for sure. Okay, so obviously, who are you watching out for, and who needs a good run?
Yeah. Thinking back to yesterday, kind of when I was trying to put all these thoughts together, the names that came to mind were Romain Grosjean. Still chasing that first victory, but this track was his coming out party for the IndyCar series in 2021. He qualified on pole in May and then finished second. So he got that podium and that beautiful picture of his hand healing scarred from that F1 crash in 2020. And just kind of like the Romain Grosjean is here and he's good at this. That was a special moment for him, and it would mean a lot for him to take home his first victory at Indianapolis, kind of place where he's kind of the phoenix that rose from the ashes, right? And he's had a great season so far with speed and then finally getting some results. Just not that first place that's eluded him. It could come this weekend, except for the fact that it could be a little faster. Second practice, 19th, not too far back when you look at timing, but the field is tight. So 1/10, 2/10 here will move you up 5 to 10 spots. So does he have the speed to do that is my question. Will Power, the man of the track. He was eighth in practice too,
Yeah.
which is fine. But he was 4/10 down of Alex Palou's leading time. So, can he qualify in that fast six and position himself well through that treacherous turn one, which is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Helpful guide behind me.
Does help.
It does help because I think one thing we haven't mentioned too is how treacherous turn one is at the Indianapolis road course. Obviously in NASCAR you can kind of bump and move people out of the way. You can't do that in Indy cars, but that doesn't mean there's less contact. At least in recent years. Last year was kind of crazy, and I'll be sitting kind of in that area monitoring it tomorrow on those new mounds if you're going to be at the track this May. It was an exciting affair, but so many cars go off there. It doesn't show up on TV. It is a place that's hard to hit your braking point. It's hard to get that car to turn right, especially when you're going four wide into the corner. But the easiest way to try and avoid that trouble is qualify really well. And I don't remember the last time we had a wet qualifying session in the IndyCar series. So that stumps me. It could be Detroit, maybe in a long time ago.
Yeah, Detroit 29. Well, remember that was one of those races. Marco Andretti.
That's right.
Yes.
But it's been a while since people have had to put down a fast lap in the rain. And it's looking like that's going to happen here. So that it's hard to make a prediction for tomorrow. And if it's just down to knowing how to do the track really well, it comes down to like willpower, Jack Harvey, Christian Lundgaard, because rain is also kind of a great equalizer, kind of performance advancements that you get by optimizing parts and etc. Sometimes they go away when the rain comes out, and it really comes down to who's the best driver, even more so than the IndyCar series is now. So it will be interesting, but I think, Romain Grosjean, willpower, and I'll throw Jack Harvey and Christian Lundgaard in there because they have had great weekends so far, and if they can back it up, it's going to be much needed for that team.
Absolutely. All right, with qualifying coming up, let's get race picks coming up here. Who do you got, and who's going to win?
It's hard to pick against willpower, and I will. I think this is Christian Lundgaard. I think he can shock people this weekend. He's got speed.
Yeah.
Ray Hall, for whatever reason, has this track down. It's incredible. They've had a really rough season, not been fast, but they have got Indianapolis down and have for a long time.
Yeah.
If he qualifies well, Christian Lundgaard could surprise a lot of people this week. And I don't have a problem picking him to do so.
And remember, he did that exact thing in July during the IndyCar NASCAR weekend. So that's a pretty solid pick. But you said it's hard to pick against willpower. I'm not doing that. I'm going to take him. So that's what I am going to do. It's going to be a Penske kind of weekend. So we'll have to see what happens. But lots of racing going on here this weekend. I know that all the series will be in action tomorrow. Of course, we have IndyCar, Indy Next, USF Pro 2000, and USF 2000. I got them all. Yes. So they'll all be in action tomorrow. Crazy weekend of racing overall. Obviously, NASCAR is at Darlington this weekend, and then of course IMSA is Sunday at Laguna Seca. So anytime you get to watch the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, it is always a treat every time you get to watch them, because there is not a dull race in that series. So, all right. For Colin, I'm Casey. We'll talk to you next week as we preview qualifying.